Hello there, you are watching live from Paris on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson, and these are our headlines this hour. Flags, flowers, ceremonies and protests on China's National Day. Tens of thousands of people once again hitting the streets of Hong Kong to demand more democracy. The UK launches its first airstrikes in Iraq while Kurdish forces battle to push back Islamic State group fighters in Syria, and Turkey prepares to decide on how it will get involved. And the first case of Ebola to be diagnosed on American soil. Doctors in Texas battling to save the life of a man who returned on a passenger plane from Liberia to Dallas. It is 9 a.m. here in the French capital. Also coming up for you in this next hour of live news. In business, we will be live at the French Finance Ministry, where the government is unveiling its tax and spending plans for next year. And don't miss our special Focus report as our reporters look into just why hundreds of young Europeans are joining Islamist extremist fighters in the Middle East. Let's begin in Hong Kong, where tens of thousands of people have met celebrations of China's National Day with booing and protest songs, as well as more calls for the city's leader to resign. Today marks the Chinese state's 65th anniversary. Now, the Hong Kong chief executive, CY Leung, hosted the occasion in a mourning ceremony. Meanwhile, demonstrators, some of whom have spent a week on the streets, repeated their message that Beijing is depriving them of promised democracy.
A clear message from the Hong Kong protesters as the Chinese flag flies overhead on China's National Day.
We've been here today for an hour, and we are trying to peacefully, attentively watching the ceremony. But we are at the same time we are trying to expressing our view, and to tell the government we need real democracy and we need universal suffrage.
As thousands of demonstrators heckled from behind police lines, a handful managed to get through the barriers to hold a silent protest during the National Day flag-raising ceremony at Golden Bauhinia Square. While some of Hong Kong's population is dissenting, for now the chief executive is singing from Beijing's hymn sheet, honouring China's past on this National Day. Hong Kong's leader also had to defend Beijing's decisions about the future.
Universal suffrage, even with limited candidates, is better than nothing. It is better for the chief executive to be elected by 5 million people rather than a committee of 1,200.
After a week of mass demonstrations and clashes with police, student protesters are hoping their ranks will swell with workers.
We believe that what the police has done in the past few days has provoked our people, and we believe that we have the right to tell the government that what we want.
They're expecting to be in it for the long haul. Organisers are threatening mass strikes and the occupation of government buildings if their demands aren't met. As the crowd grows, so does the fear of a police crackdown.
Well, the protest movement sprang up after Beijing declared that it would vet all candidates for Hong Kong's next leadership election. Earlier on, I spoke to one of the protesters, Esther Yu, who is a nurse in Hong Kong. I asked her what she made of the chief executive's statement earlier that it's better to have universal suffrage than not.
The universal suffrage, the interpretation is totally different. There is a pre-screening that even the candidate are pre-screened by certain minority, like still from the 1,200 of elected people. And then out of those 1,200, they are going to nominate 2 or 3 that are so-called qualified. And then what they mean for the universal suffrage from CY Leung is we have to vote out of those pre-selected 2 or 3. So which for us is not a real universal suffrage. That's what we are asking for. And that brings us that we are asking for a better future, a real democratic community or society for most of the Hong Kong people, and not only serving the 1,200, the very selected minority who are already affiliated to the central government.
In Beijing, flags, flowers, lanterns and more than 100,000 people have packed out the iconic Tiananmen Square for a dawn flag-raising ceremony for National Day. Afterwards, 10,000 pigeons and 30,000 balloons were released from the Golden Water Bridge to symbolise wishes for peace and prosperity. The Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken out about the protests in Hong Kong at a banquet to mark National Day. This is the first time he's publicly addressed the issue since the rallies first emerged last week.
The central government will unswervingly implement the guidelines of the One Country, Two Systems doctrine and steadfastly safeguard the long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong and Macau. We firmly believe that compatriots in Hong Kong and Macau will create an even better future in the big family of the motherland.
Well, all eyes are on Hong Kong right now, including those of the world's media. Let's check out how the newspapers around the world are reacting to the protests with our press reviewer, Florence Villeminot. Hello. Hi. Let's start off with what the press in Hong Kong are saying.
That's right. Let's take a look at an article in the South China Morning Post today. It says that the thunder and rain failed to dent the pro-democracy protests sweeping Hong Kong. You can see here it says the umbrella revolution is weathering the storm. And in fact, the embattled chief executive, Leung Chun-ying, himself admits that the protests are set to last for quite a long time. Lots of focus as well on the fact that, as you were saying, today is China's national holiday, a holiday that could bring protesting crowds to a peak and increase the risk of confrontation. On the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, you can see here that protesters are bracing for a test. This holiday could be a real game changer for the protest movement. And the Washington Post agrees with that today in an article. It says that this holiday turnout could really sway the future of the democracy protests. It's going to be a crucial test of wills on both sides, according to the Washington Post. Demonstrators are hoping that hundreds and thousands of workers are going to swell the ranks. To quote the article, it says that if a big crowd does not turn up, the momentum of the demonstrations could be sapped.
Indeed. And we know that reporting conditions are rather different in mainland China. What about their newspapers?
It's really interesting to take a look at the papers in mainland China today. Let's take a look at China Daily. I went through the whole paper and I did not find a single article on the demonstrations in Hong Kong. They're focusing more on the first Martyrs' Day, which took place yesterday in Beijing. You can see a photo of a ceremony there. Other papers are focusing on the national holiday today. An article in People's Daily, you can see here, China celebrates the 65th anniversary, and you can see a photo of President Xi Jinping when he was talking. We just heard him quoting there, talking about the demonstrations in Hong Kong. He vowed to safeguard Hong Kong's prosperity, but as I said, really no mention of the demonstrations today in the Chinese press.
And also the internet as well. If you're inside mainland China, very hard to find anything at all, or probably impossible, about what's happening in Hong Kong.
That's right. It's very interesting to see what's happening online as well. There's an interesting article in the New York Times today that focuses on just that. You can see how it says that demonstrators and censors struggle online. Now, mainland China's politically minded web users are really trying to outmaneuver what the New York Times calls an invisible army of internet guardians that are trying to purge social media, especially Sina Weibo, that's kind of the Chinese Twitter, of any photos or news of the demonstrations. But according to this article, there are signs that China's censorship machine is actually struggling to keep up with these very savvy internet users who are finding all sorts of ways to, thumb their nose at authorities. For instance, a lot of internet users are changing their profile photo to a photo of Xi Jinping holding an umbrella, a very little sign there at the demonstrations. Or another technique is to post pro-democracy comments on non-political websites like music websites, etc.
And within Hong Kong as well, there's censorship by the authorities.
Absolutely. Beijing has censored Instagram, for instance. This is something that people were using to communicate. And on top of that, there's so many people in the streets that often the network can get quite saturated. Slate here says that, Hong Kongers are actually finding a new tech ally, and that is a messaging app for smartphones called FireChat. Now, what's interesting about FireChat is it allows users to send messages off the grid. That means without internet or mobile phone coverage. And according to Slate, FireChat has received 100,000 new signups in Hong Kong in less than 24 hours.
I'd be very interested to know how that works without internet access or mobile phone coverage. Mind-boggling. The paper's also focusing on what is next for Hong Kong and its relationship with mainland China. Is it moving away? Will it be brought closer to Beijing?
That's right. Well, it's very interesting. Their opinions are quite divided about what is next for Hong Kong, what Hong Kong should actually hope for. I pulled out, first of all, this piece from The Guardian. This is an opinion piece by a man named Martin Jacques. He's a specialist in China. He's written a book called When China Rules the World. He says that demonstrators in Hong Kong are crying for democracy, but actually they're quite driven by resentment to mainland Chinese citizens who are surpassing Hong Kong, becoming richer. And so you can see what he thinks. He says that China is Hong Kong's future, not its enemy. Lots of other Western media, though, have a different opinion. Let's take a look at the editorial in The Independent today. They say that actually the choice is for China. Rather than suppress it, China should use the uprising in Hong Kong to create a more open and a more tolerant society, though it doesn't really say just how to go about doing that. Another interesting piece, this time in Time magazine. This is by Anson Chan, Chief Secretary of the Hong Kong government, both before and after the city's return to Chinese sovereignty in 1997. She's also the founder of the Hong Kong 2020 Democracy Advocacy Group. Now, you can see here, she says that Hong Kong is ready for democracy, but China isn't ready for a free, democratically governed Hong Kong, because according to her, Beijing fears that it wouldn't be able to control Hong Kong if it becomes more democratic.
All right, and we will be getting some opinion from another China expert a little bit later on in the programme. Thank you very much for that look through how this story has been covered in the international press. Florence Villemino, our press reviewer here at France 24.